I will call the December meeting of the Pedestrian Advisory Committee to order at 16:35. And first start with a roll call. I am Matt McGrath, the chair. I am here. Jonathan Day. Here. Nancy.
Yes.
Alex. Jody. Excused absence. Because if you're not excused, you must show up. And it's always funny when they, on a different commission, but they say that, and I'm like, what if I'm not excused? I'm still not coming.
We heard your reasons now.
You be here on time. I'm sorry. Ron?
I'm here on purpose and not excused.
Yes, and not mountain biking somewhere fun, which I always respect, but always slightly jealous about.
That's good.
And then online, we have some of our usual folks, Ryan, Jeff, and Christopher. Thank you, folks, for joining us. Start with preliminary general business and announcements. Members of the PAC or staff are allowed up to 3 minutes to make announcements of any kind. Do we have any, start with the committee members, any announcements folks would like to make? I can't think of any myself. Martin, do you have any early announcements?
I don't.
Okay. Move on to public comment, and we do not have any members of the public with us, and I trust you did not get any advanced public comments, Martin.
Did not.
Read into the record. Fantastic. And we move on to approval of minutes, which Martin's still working on.
Yes, we have a couple of them done, but I didn't get them out to you in time. So we're getting caught up.
You're gonna have to do a lot of studying to go back to make a good faith effort to say, yes, I approve the July 13th minutes. I'm actually gonna have to do some reading on that one, April 13th even. Great. Okay, moving on to old business, some interesting old business, Butler Avenue, bike lanes and protected intersections.
I think I have a slide for this one.
Or as part of that, you recap the city council meeting. Didn't they talk about this a few weeks ago? Maybe not. Maybe I made that up.
I don't think so. Jeff,
Okay.
do you know? Am I forgetting something? Was something on Butler on city council?
It was a roundabout. Different, yeah. Which
Yeah,
is-
we did Butler 4th a few weeks ago, and then, yeah, but nothing on this kind of stuff.
Okay, I'm conflating my butlers. Apologies.
A lot going on out there.
Nothing first. Easy to do. Okay, I originally had this under reports just to give you kind of an update, but it seemed like there was enough going on with it that we could make it a real item. So first, we've applied for a couple of grants the last several months. I sent out an announcement earlier. We received the Safe Streets for All grant
Great.
for
That's fantastic.
Man,
$9.6 million. The city's match is 2.4 for $12 million total. We also got a transportation alternatives grant for the 2 intersections. And the total was $415,000, and that was only for the design. I think they were anticipating that we would do the design and then reapply to the same grant program for funding after that. We're trying to figure out how to align those two things. And we've got some options, and I'm sure we'll be able to manage that. The second thing is WSP is an engineering firm who did the Lone Tree overpass as well as the concept plans for the 2 intersections. And we've hired them to do 30% concept plans for the corridor. So we did this before we knew we were getting the grant or not to kind of help move the project forward. And the council was really eager for it to keep moving and wanted us to do this. So we'll have 30% concept plans done. It will get us kind of a head start on the overall project, as well as identifying if we need to do acquisition, for example, where we need to do that. And then the final thing is I sent copies of the speed limit evaluation study. This is going to council in January. I think at BAC, we had some conversation about the speed limits and determined that we would have a full presentation on just that topic at our January meeting. So if you have any comments, we're going to talk about it now. We can certainly do that. It's on the agenda. But just know that we can have a full conversation and presentation about the speed limit part of it, at least, in January.
Yeah, I read the report. Came to the conclusion that 35 was, or the current speed limits were appropriate, I think.
I'll just comment, lower the speed limit, but we'll wait till January to make more substantive comments on it.
I think it was like, if you lowered it, it would be orbit, like people would still go faster.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's true on almost,
Yeah.
that's anytime we have a conversation anywhere about lowering the
Yeah.
speed limit, it's like, really?
And coming over, there was not traffic
Yeah.
strangely, and I was driving what I felt was comfortable. I looked down, I was going 33. So I was like, okay,
Oh, yeah.
that's probably what I would go. I'm glad I wasn't going 36. I might not have admitted it.
When's the last time you had your speedometer tuned?
Yes, good point. Since I've retired, I don't like to drive fast. I'm like, I don't.
Yeah,
drive
like,
anymore.
yes.
I have a lifetime.
I even got there before retirement. I'm like, I'll get there when I get there.
It's always
Yeah.
not driving entirely.
I'm not there yet. I'm blaming the retired people for going slow.
I'm in. I'm guilty. In the interest of safety.
Okay, so Martin, so for January, that'll be a topic. So that's also gonna be an agenda topic for the bike advisory committee in January?
Yes,
Like a follow-up to that conversation. Okay.
yeah. Just to skip ahead, at the end of the meeting, we can talk about, if we want to have a combined, like our annual combined meeting with EC in January.
That was everything after that, right, Martin?
That was everything.
Okay, great. Moving on to new business, pedestrian and bicycle project capital and grants planning.
So we recently kicked off the city's annual budget season, which in a larger sense, the entire budget for the city is prepared, reviewed, discussed, reviewed again, revised, discussed. And at some point before June 30th, it goes to council for final approval. One component of that is the capital plan, which we do every year at the same time. For the capital plan, we essentially identify capital projects that we want to build over the next 5 years. Anything that goes in next fiscal year's budget, we have money for. It's physically part of the budget. And anything in the 4 years after that is a plan. So in theory, if we build what we intend to next year, then the first year the capital program moves up and that becomes our budget. And we cycle through it. Rarely, however, does it actually work that smoothly. We, over the past couple of years, the ped and bike part of it is fairly well organized, if I do say so myself. Over the last couple of years, we've identified all the projects we want to build. We've prioritized them. We've kind of talked about the ones that should go first. So from that perspective, much of what was in the plan last year will show up in the plan again this year. Our primary funding source is the transportation tax, which had allotted $29 million over the 20-year life of the tax. And that started in 2020, so it's been collecting money for a couple of years already. We can also supplement that with any grants that will come our way. And we've been successful twice. We got $5.5 million for first mile, last mile, and now almost 10 million for the Butler project. So that certainly helps. What else to say about the capital planning process? I've got a little presentation that will go through the projects. We can look at them on a map just to see where they are. Some of the more significant changes that we're proposing for this year's capital budget, at least for the ped and bike projects. One is we're probably going to allocate more money toward doing concept plans. And I think that will serve a couple of purposes. One, it will help these projects move forward. So they'll kind of begin in the capital process and get a little head start if we do the initial design for them. Two is that we'll be able to have information for future grants if they would make a good grant project. And we'll have exhibits, drawings, a good engineer's estimate of the cost, an idea of the feasibility or what constructability issues we might be up against. And for the life of me, the third benefit is escaping. Back to that.
Keeps the consultants busy. Yeah.
Yes, that could be part of it.
Keeps them happy.
Yeah. So we had money in the last couple of capital budgets for this sort of thing, but we'll probably be a little bit more, take more initiative and identify the projects that we want to do for preliminary design, and then make sure we have enough money for that. So that's one revision. The second one is over the last year or two, we've been setting aside a small amount of money for replacement of asphalt foot trails. And it feels like some of the trails have gotten bad enough that we can't wait a few more years to replace them. So we may ask for more money to replace some of those trails. And we've got some slides to show you where they are. I think it's going to be north of $10 million if we replaced all of them. So we'll have to do this. We'll have to figure out which ones we want to do first.
Would it be replaced with gravel or?
That's a
location.
That's an open question. We have not had great luck with asphalt trails, and we need
Yeah.
to decide if we want to repair them with more asphalt and, determine how
Hope it
long.
works this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, hope it's,
I mean,
like the last dozen times.
Preach thought here, it's gonna kill.
Works this time.
Yeah.
Or go to concrete. There's a cost difference, obviously.
Good, but expensive.
Yeah, asphalt may last longer if we have a regular maintenance program for it. That may buy us a few extra years, but it still may not be a good long-term solution. Like Matt said, we have a lot of freeze thaw. Asphalt trails tend to dry out.
Yeah, asphalt just degrades as soon as you put it down, right?
Yeah.
That's what somebody told me.
Yeah,
A streets guy told me once, like, oh yeah, as soon as you put it down, it's dying, as we.
the process has begun.
Yeah, unlike concrete, which continues to get harder, yeah.
Yes, exactly, yeah. So that's the second one. Well, you have to excuse me, I'm just having trouble with memory stuff today.
Does it get better?
Oh, the third one, yeah, no, it doesn't. The third one
In my
is,
case, yeah.
we've talked about grants over the last couple of years. We've begun applying for them, and one of the things we want to do with this capital plan is to have more of kind of an intentional plan for grants, like to identify the projects, identify the grants that they might go for or be appropriate for. So for example, the Safe Streets for All grant is going to come out again in the spring with a deadline in the middle of summer. So if we want to apply for that, it would be ideal to have a project already lined up for it, like to know what we're going to apply for. The same with these other programs. It can also help us identify some of the grants that we haven't used or haven't applied for, and see what projects might fit for those. So that's number 3 and there's a whole series of slides in here
Right,
about what
so have the
projects.
design.
Yeah,
Very helpful.
yeah, you're right. And if we know what we want to.
Yeah,
apply
you're like,
for, we can do the
oh,
design.
Yeah,
start getting
turns
the
out
funds.
that's more appropriate for that. I think still having that master plan is the best thing ever, though. Just then okay, here's a whole list of things if money becomes available, or here's how we plan. I've operated in an environment we didn't have that, so it was just, oh, we got some money. What are we gonna do now? And if if you didn't have a good plan, somebody with some other needs would scoop it up and take it away.
Yes, that is always a danger. And I
Yeah.
will say that having a good master plan is necessary to avoid that, but not always sufficient.
But true, I mean, at least you actually put your best foot forward. Yeah, we do our best. Yeah, I can imagine. Everybody wants more than they're gonna get.
Yeah, and we had, like I mentioned before, we have $29 million kind of allocated for ped and bike, and that gets attention. Like people see that. I wonder what can we do with that $29 million?
Wait, I walk, I don't walk, yeah.
Okay, so any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I'll kind of go. This is organized like how, in general, how the capital plan is organized. So the first category under general, we have planning and programming, which pays some staff salaries, including a portion of mine. Project development and pre-design is the fund that we will use for the concept plans, or 15-30% plans. And then we have money from previous years that the council wanted us to include for a Vision Zero plan. And if you are, are you familiar with the Vision Zero concept? It's kind of like a safe systems approach, essentially. And the idea is that people make mistakes, motor vehicle crashes with peds and bikes and between vehicles are not always avoidable, but we can limit them and limit the severity of them. So really the Vision Zero means that our target is zero pedestrian and bicycle fatalities and serious injuries.
We used to use that in occupational safety, same thing.
The same concept.
Yeah, it's like
Imagine.
safety
Yeah,
pyramid,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, like you can't avoid everything, but can we reduce the?
Yeah, you
impact
work
of
on the
it?
little ones and you avoid the big
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's been proven to work, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of information on Vision Zero or safe systems approach as well. So there's money in the budget for that. We kind of have to figure out how we structure it and what we do with it and what it looks like. So the second group is foots, and here we have money for foot signing. At this point, it's making sure that as we build new trails, that we have the appropriate signage for it. We have a couple of trails that were built in the last few years that need additional signing. And then if we can think about things like if we have money, we want to add additional trailhead signs, for example, would they be beneficial? The second one is.
Mark, so is this in the 1 year? What are these? Are these in the,
This is generally in the whole 5-year plan.
okay,
If I think of it, I'll tell you which ones have money
that we,
in the
okay,
first year. Yeah, foot signing does, improvements and enhancements would. Capital projects are gonna get spread out, so they
Yeah.
may not all have money in the first year.
And can you, with those capital projects, can you get developers? I know some of those look like they're in newer areas to contribute to the cost of doing the trails. I'm sure that's something to look at too, right?
Yeah. I mean, if it's part of a development, we usually
Right.
anticipate that it will be done with that development.
Okay.
And not before. So we don't necessarily have to fund those.
Okay.
If we wait for development.
Okay.
And typically, if it's in an area, like if it's on private land in an area that's gonna be developed, there may not be a need for that trail until there's development there.
Okay.
Like it's the development that needs that trail.
Right.
We don't necessarily have to have the trail in advance. So we can wait for the development.
Yeah, no, I was thinking the other way, like you can get the developer to pay for it or
Right.
instead of the city having to pay for it.
Yeah. We also do that with capital projects.
Yeah, no, I learned that when I worked at the university. I mean, get somebody else to pay for something. It's like,
Basic principle.
yeah, it's like, well, there's only so much money to go around, yeah.
Other people's money.
Yeah. It's all for the public good, but.
So improvements and enhancements, we have not taken advantage of that, but I think if we work closely with pros, I know they didn't have a number of places where we could fund improvements to the existing trails. The third category is actual projects. There's a list of them. Let's look at a map. Single track forest access, we had in the budget from last year as well. I think we're getting close with some of the acquisitions, so hopefully we can actually start working on some of the projects. The idea there is that these are connections between the foot system and the Forest Service trails, and don't necessarily need full built foots. And then I mentioned the asphalt trail replacement. So there's a list of trails. Here's a list of potential grants, and I'll show you this. I think this will be better. And let's see if we can. Is it tough to see, or is that okay?
it's tough, but that's, yeah, oh, that's better. Thank you.
Okay, so this shows the the projects that we'll have funded over the next 5 years. Schweitzer Canyon, we've been working on for a while. Fox Glen has always been kind of out there. Those are the kind of the two big projects. A few of these other ones you can see are kind of fill in, like the ones down here at High Country and Lake Mary. We're anticipating that development is going to build the pieces in between. You can see these are two ends. So once development does that, there becomes a greater need to complete those end pieces to make the thing functional. And then a couple other short ones. So just interrupt. I won't stop necessarily to ask for questions, but feel free to jump in and ask. So here are the single track connectors. One of the advantages of these is that they tend to be less expensive than full foots trails. Well, they're a lot less expensive than full foots trails. So if we put a little money aside, we can afford more of them. This may be a little bit ideal, but this is what we would have money for the next 5 years.
To build these out, so if the budget is approved, there would be funding for these over the next 5 years.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
No, it's wonderful. I was like, that's a lot of trails.
maybe a little bit optimistic,
Yeah.
but
I like that picture canyon. That would be nice. Yeah. Get off the road.
yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it? And then some of these are really, again, like these provide access to,
So that one at the end of Paradise is also relevant to my professional interests. What exactly is that one?
it is, that actually I think is gonna get done as part of the basins that are going in. So we have a couple places where they're within the city that have trail access out to that. It used to be a city park or designated as a city park, and now it's where the basins are going. One's from the end of Appalachian, one's from the end of Adrian,
Oh, okay. So
it's from the end of Park.
it's not at the end of Paradise. Okay. That's
At the end of
Paradise to
Paradise. Yeah,
the
yeah,
west.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to see.
Right, that goes up here. Yeah.
That's what I thought for a second. I thought it was at the end of Paradise. I was like, isn't there already a trail there? I mean, it's the forest right there. What are you gonna do?
Right, and I think that, the corresponding trail on the Forest Service side is included in Metal.
Yes.
And we've been working with, Pat and Forest to make sure that,
Yep. And that's the area we'll be working on a lot this year.
yeah. So those are single track, and then a couple over here on the, kind of in the southwest are really connections for the loop trail. This one along Woody Mountain continues the loop trail. The Santa Fe Trail, what you don't see here is the piece in between would be built as part of future phases of Timber Sky.
Okay.
So they'll build a foots trail up to their property line, and then we have a short distance to go
Connect.
here in the red to connect over to Flag Ranch Road, which would make that a really useful connection. Even for people who work at Gore, for example, would find that useful. These are the asphalt trails. Yeah. So the ones on the NAU campus are not the city's to maintain. Some of the shorter ones, we probably won't include. The Southwest Crossing one we make, so that's in fairly bad shape.
Which one is that?
It's the one that goes under the interstate from like Boulder Point to University Heights.
Oh, yeah. Thanks. That name.
The other ones are more familiar. The one along Fort Valley Road, along Lone Tree, JWP and Lake Mary.
And then actually in pretty good shape.
Is it?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not bad.
yeah, the Lone Tree one's got gaps.
Is JWP on?
I almost killed myself on
Oh.
that. There's these huge potholes.
Yeah,
All
maybe it's the
on the
pot-
south side.
Not the gaps, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lone Tree's bad enough to where.
Really?
I'll
Which
just
one
take
are
the
we-
road.
The JWP
Yeah.
Asphalt foots. Yeah,
Is it really?
yeah, it's really bad. At least if you're on a bike. I mean, if you're just walking, obviously, it's not a big deal.
Ran it.
Yeah, I
When
go
I,
by
when I saw you and I
Right,
came
yeah.
out that way and I thought it was all right, but yeah, no, I could see how,
I guess
I was
rel-
not, I was going a little bit slower than you were going, John.
Yeah, if you just block it, it's fine, but
I
yeah.
guess relative to.
Yeah, that makes
Lemon tree, it's.
Yeah. That, yeah, Lone Tree's a mess.
So, do you have a road bike? What size are your tires? Like 20, 22, 25?
5.
25, yeah.
Yeah, don't take it on that trail.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, these I always on my feet on these ones. But Ron had said, asked about the surface. I'm curious, because he had said maybe natural surface. And I think looking at the map, none of these would go to
Yeah,
a natural
yeah.
surface. But so when would that decision and what would that look like to decide if we were gonna redo it as is or switch to concrete or Trex or whatever else?
Or even a combination. Some areas maybe gravel and then you transition to concrete where would you, whatever the engineers say would be appropriate, but seems like, although I don't know what the maintenance is on just like a natural, but the fudge trails now are kind of a engineered gravel of some sort.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
biggest,
they
the
hold
biggest maintenance issue is water.
Right.
If they don't drain properly or water's
Okay.
going across, they'll get pretty eroded. We are planning to, we've talked to different divisions of the city about, the viability of asphalt.
Yeah, they probably.
For trails and opportunities to replace it. So we'll probably convene a group and, go visit some of these places and have a discussion about, is asphalt viable as a replacement material, or should we
Yeah.
plan on concrete? And if we did asphalt, like what?
Just needs a lot of maintenance. I
It just
think,
needs a lot of
I
maintenance.
think if you go out there and patch it once a year, once every 2 years, it would probably be way better than it is now.
Yeah, really, we've never really had, any kind of maintenance program for our asphalt
Right.
trails. And if it were a roadway and we were doing it, we would crack seal. when
Yeah,
cracks get
just do
developed.
some basic stuff.
They re-oil them because they dry out. I think that's a significant source of cracking. On roads, we chip seal them, but on trails, we might do something different.
It's probably,
And all that costs, I mean, there's a cost to all that, and there's a limited, even with doing that, there's a
Yeah,
still
'cause
limited life to
to
asphalt.
construct, isn't it, that comes out of one budget, like a capital budget, and then to maintain, is that another budget? You couldn't take,
Yes.
can't take
exactly.
capital money and maintain trails, so that's.
The maintenance people would be, in favor of the idea of taking capital money.
Yeah, I'm sure they would, yeah, but
That
that probably doesn't work that way,
$49
yeah. Somebody wouldn't be happy.
They'd be okay with that. yeah.
But yeah, it seems like, yeah, you can build it and they're like, okay, you gotta maintain this.
Yeah, and concrete has different issues that require maintenance, but if it's done well, it could last 50 years or more.
Yeah, yeah.
We build them thicker now, so they should crack less. We pin them together with our expansion joints, so there should be less deflection this way. It's not perfect. of course, but,
Yeah, cause you get the gaps.
Yeah, but all that costs. I mean, concrete is
Yeah.
is more expensive than asphalt, doing these things to it. 6 inches of concrete is more than 4 inches of concrete.
Right,
All these
right.
things cost. Just to give you an example, if you're familiar with Ponderosa Trails, we've repaired the section of trail through the neighborhood and the section of trail that's along Pulliam a couple years ago. And through the neighborhood where there were cracks, we cut out that section of trail and then replaced it basically with new asphalt.
Okay.
And on the section that's adjacent to Pulliam, the existing asphalt trail was ground up and then compacted as a base course. And then a new layer of asphalt was put over the top. The trail through Ponderosa Trails, all the cracks that were repaired have come back. And probably in very much the same location. Because one of the issues can be the subgrade, if it's not compacted properly,
yeah.
if there's water, if it's water in there, then it'll crack. And I think the same things are coming back. The section along Pulliam, I think, has lasted better, but if you look close at that, I think you can see where cracks will show up next year.
Starting to show.
Yeah.
Is accessibility a factor in what kind of material you're gonna use to repair those or place them?
in a lot of these cases, the trail is located along the side of a road. And so it replaces the function of a sidewalk. So it feels like that those trails need to be paved and aggregate wouldn't be suitable, for example, because we want them to be usable year round, to be accessible. Because it's a sidewalk as well. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I'm familiar with the Fort Valley Trail and it goes by the peaks. And I know there's people out there and old folks using that trail a lot with wheeled devices that wouldn't do well with gravel or.
I think really, when I look at the map, there's only a couple that aren't along roads. The one through the middle of Ponderosa Trails neighborhood is one. That southwest one is another. So in theory, we could think about converting those to aggregate. I think, by the time you factor in the cost and the reduction in usability, it probably is not a good investment for the city, but we'll keep it on the table. And then the last map here is potential grant projects. And you can see our Picture Canyon Trail really works best if we can extend that foots all the way past Home Depot. Marshall Trail, the context for that is changing a little bit because the school district is planning on demolishing the existing building and building a new building across the street where charter schools were most recently, and some time ago that used to be junior high, Flag Junior High. The need for the trail is still there to kind of make that connection over from Fort Valley. But it may be a little bit easier since there may be less encumbrances on that property. This kind of group is really the trail that goes up to Lowell. That would be separate from the road that goes up, but it includes the realignment of the Mars Hill Trail, the really, really steep section. Santa Fe would be built after the Rio project goes in, so this is kind of the Rio to flood control project, I should say. And a couple of other small ones.
So Mark, for those grant ones, is it just those are there and ready and just waiting for the right grant opportunity, or how are they prioritized?
They're not so far. I mean, we prioritize them among, like they have it has a score, so we can tell what their priority is relative to other foots trails. But we won't get grants for all these projects, so we have to figure out which one is most important.
Okay.
And we will have more opportunities for conversation about that, maybe, a formal discussion. Okay, moving on to sidewalks. Our categories in the capital plan here are sidewalk infill, sidewalk projects, and then we have first mile, last mile, and potential grants. And I'll go right to the maps. These are the infill projects. We have had a good relationship with the city's streets department. So we use the same contractor that does the road repair and street safety projects, which is the mill and fill, the overlays on streets. And if we can identify sidewalks and give them the money for it, their contractor is happy to do the sidewalks as well. At this point, we've done all the easy ones that don't require plans. We've got a sidewalk that ends here, the sidewalk that ends here, and you just, pour the sidewalk in between the two to connect. So the next round probably require some version of an engineered plan to see how they're going to work. And it may require curb and gutter, small retaining walls, some grading, drainage considerations, whatever it is, but we'll include that as part of it and hope to keep doing that. Here are the projects. Really, we only had two identified, the missing sidewalks on Fourth Street. And then we have been talking about adding kind of a sidewalk bike lane along the Linda Vista ramp from, it really goes from Linda Vista to Cedar. You picture how that works?
Yeah, would that be impacted by the wedge detention basin at all? I mean, the road's still gonna be there, I guess.
We would build on the other side of it,
Yeah,
so it wouldn't be physically impacted. It would be, I think part of the same project. So we're taking advantage of
that's what I
the
was
work
thinking.
being done. Like if we give them some money, they can,
They'll already be mobilized.
yeah. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
So I think it's a good opportunity. I just want to double check. We had not identified this before as one of our potential projects. It probably falls into kind of that second wave of priorities. But it feels like it would be a good
Somebody's already
kind of
there.
opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No matter what we do, that detention base is not gonna look great. So any other improvements we can make in the area to make it that corridor? Cause I mean, that whole Rocket Cedar is gonna get hit with some flood mitigation stuff here soon, and it's not gonna,
It's going to look different.
that's a good way of putting it.
Gonna work now.
Yeah.
So we'll distract the pedestrians with a nice sidewalk tomorrow. Okay. So I'm gonna go to first mile, last mile, and first mile, last mile is really the reason that we don't have many sidewalk projects identified, is because we have more of them here in the first mile, last mile grant. And we are working, we'll give an update later on the status of that project, but we're continuing to work through the engineering part of it. And these are the sidewalks that we're considering. And the last one is potential grant projects. Some of these overlap.
Like you say, aren't those fourth ones?
Yeah, yeah.
How do they overlap? Cause wasn't it capital project they were listed under?
Yes, so if we identified them for grant funding and got a grant, it would just supplant the capital money. We'd use that somewhere else. Some of these, like the ones by San Francisco and the one on Fort Valley, and even some of these over here by University, were originally part of first mile, last mile, but for different reasons have dropped out. And so a different grant might be a way to pick them back up. I just have a little bit about bikeways. Our categories are signing, bicycle parking, projects that involve only striping and marking, bike boulevards in the out years of the capital plan. Are you familiar with bike boulevards? They're quiet residential streets that make good bike alignments. A handful of projects. We have a few things underway for first mile, last mile. And then among the projects, a couple of them will make good grants. And I don't have a good map to show you for all these, but I'll show you at least the projects and potential grants. And just to look at these, this is kind of a connection from the foots along 89 to Caspar and Lynch and the underpasses and the Route 66 trail. So right now this area is a little bit tricky to get through, but we could make it more direct. Let's go around clockwise. This is along Country Club. And there's kind of a awkward foots along the side of the street.
Are you talking about like by the driving range or that golf course?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Parking.
This is the interchange along Butler at I-40. And the reason this one comes up is if the city does the project along the rest of Butler, we'll have kind of a gap in there in terms of bicycle accommodation. This blue line is Butler, which we have the Safe Streets for All grant for. This kind of curvy line is the Milton Bikeway, which is an ambitious project, but it would be an alternative, an alignment that is parallel to Milton, but not on Milton.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Get a lot of business.
We should work on that one.
Yeah.
This is the same as the Foots one, so kind of the west side trail going out between Route 66 and the railroad tracks. This is McConnell. And this one is the really a small project, but if you've ever ridden a road bike out 180, just after you get outside the city, the road, there's one spot of the road that gets really narrow as you go out, and bicyclists, we've identified the need to widen that for years. Just have never really gotten to it.
So is this widening of the road and construction of, sounds like separate bike paths, or it says bikeway. What does that mean exactly on there?
It would depend, like some of these, like the Milton one, and this one on the west side, and the one out here would be a combination of improvements on the road, on existing streets, and then maybe trails that connect in between, where necessary. This one could be on-street facilities, or if it's a bigger project, it could construct separated facilities through that area that's there now. This would probably be a construction project just to replace that.
So the details haven't been totally figured out. This is just.
Not entirely,
Conceptual.
yeah, broad brush, yeah. I mean, that would be one of the purposes of doing the concept plans for it, is to get more detail. So when we ask for a grant, we know exactly what we're asking for, and what it might cost. Enhanced crossings, we have a couple of projects in the capital plan, a handful of them in first mile, last mile, and then a few of them are good potential grants. So I'll show you the maps. Here are the potential projects. Humphreys at Fine. That's on an ADOT right of way. Milton, somewhere in the vicinity of Starbucks, also on ADOT. And then we've included this one, but I know there are some issues we need to work through to make it work. It's the Foots Crossing on Woodlands Village, between like the Walmart and Big
Yeah.
Five. Yeah,
That one's a little tricky.
it's a little tricky. Yeah,
That's the one, so I live in University Heights, and that crossing prevents me from having my kids take the public bus home from school, because it's so hard to get across that thing.
Yeah, people just,
And
there we go.
when they come out, they're like, whoa,
Yeah,
and I know it's there.
right,
Yeah, I could use some help.
So for Jonathan, it's personal.
yes.
Goodness. That's all right.
I'm driving slow because your kids might pop out. So I point out,
So,
especially there, yeah.
so here, they don't all fit on the screen, but here are the crossings for first mile, last mile. And we just reviewed the consultant's work and doing kind of the first evaluation of these crossings. So we have 3 on Fort Valley Road. The most significant one is here at Fort Valley and Forest. It's come up on our radar frequently before.
Yeah.
Kind of going way out to this side of town, Highway 89 at Snowflake. The need for that was really initiated by the Sacred Peaks Medical Center and their access of their clients to the bus. This is a tough part of town for, that road is pretty fast.
Uh-huh.
Pretty at that
And
point.
the people in that part of town are
Going
tough.
somewhere.
So there's some issues with that one, but we're working through it. This is a handful of crossings along Solier, and each one of these corresponds to a transit stop.
Yeah.
Our thought was just to have a median island for people to like use as a crossing in those locations. Here's one at Cedar, somewhere between, and then 2 down on Lake Mary Road. This one is at Cochise, which is also close to Mohawk, so it's right where the fire station
Okay.
is on one side of the road and the park on the other side of the road.
Yeah, you got the game and
And
fish.
so Martin, is
Yeah.
these crossings, it varies, like what the crossing, the treatment varies
Yes,
crossing.
exactly. Yeah, like the one at Fort Valley and Forest would probably be some type of beacon crossing. Same with the one out at 89, if that were possible.
To say that, yeah, it's the only way to do anything.
What's that?
That's the only way to do it. Yeah, painting some lines is not gonna do anything out there.
Right.
Going to the canyon.
Yeah.
Moving.
Yeah. Yeah, and then like on Solier, I mentioned it would just be the median island, so we don't necessarily need a beacon crossing for that. And then these would probably be, the amber flashing beacons, I would guess. So that's first mile, last mile, those are underway. And then here are the grant ones. Excuse me, so, Humphreys would fine and the Milton ones show up again, if they would make good grant projects. We had identified the one at Butler Avenue on O'Leary in the past and actually had it in the capital plan, but it's been absorbed into the Safe Streets for All project. And then this one I show, Huntington Grant. Flag Shelter Services has bought the hotel there. Mountain Line has a transit stop, and so we're working on different ways of getting people across, Huntington. If that were a grant, it would be, something that Mountain Line applied for, not necessarily the city. And then I should mention all these other, kind of grayed out ones are where we have identified potential crossings, but they're not all of them are high priority. Grade separations, these are bridges and tunnels. Here I'll show you the categories. We only have one project. These tend to be really expensive, so we're a couple potential grants, and then I included 4 that are either in planning or almost under construction as part of other projects. So here the red one is the one we have in the plan. And this one's kind of hard to see what the context is, but it's along the Bow and Arrow Wash. And it's where future alignment of Lone Tree would cross the wash.
I know that, that's right where I live, yeah.
That would be built as part of development. But if we want to have an undercrossing, we probably have to pay for at least part of it. So that's the funding for that. The blue are potential grants. Both of these are across Milton. And the green are the ones that are in the works. So this is the Florence Walnut. These are the 2 right up behind here downtown. And then this one is the green one that's kind of half underneath. The blue one is the one that's part of the Beulah University roundabout. So these maybe end up the same one, like if it's one or the other, but it may not have to be both. And then again, the gray ones are other planned ones, but these are the ones that we have float to the top as priorities. And then the last category, we haven't had in the capital plan before. We just included to see if they would make good grant projects. And we call them complete streets or street conversions, but they fall into different categories even below that. So I'll show you the map. This is Fremont, that's what we're working on already to narrow the road.
Right. So,
this is Country Club here from like Oakmont on the south or Bear Paw on the south up to Solier on the north. And as a complete street, we'd be looking at all the things. So it needs a sidewalk on one side. We talked about a bikeway or a foots on the other side. So can all those things be wrapped into kind of one project? Similar with Cedar Avenue. Can that street be redone in a way to make it easier to cross, more comfortable for pets and bikes? 4th Street, kind of the same category. The other 2 that we have on here are Milton and Highway 89. And these are shown here because either a safety study is being conducted, or we've asked for a safety study to be conducted. And the results of that may suggest projects to improve safety that could be eligible for grant funding. So we don't know what it would look like, but those might be future projects. So we'll include a placeholder in the capital plan. And that's kind of it.
That's it?
That's it.
That's all?
Yeah.
makes me feel better about paying my property.
Yeah.
Something like-
No, there's some great
Thanks.
stuff in there. And
Yeah.
good progress.
Actually, it's less your property taxes, more like sales tax.
Okay, well, I have no trouble buying stuff too, so, continue.
So if you're putting off buying that new Mercedes, for example.
Well, I'm
go-
10, I'm more of
No, go ahead.
a 10-year-old Toyota guy.
So we will continue, I'll include this on future agendas, but we may not have to have like a lot of
Yeah.
discussion, but just to show you, so where we are in the process of what our thinking is.
Yeah, that was great. Part of it.
Yeah.
Second item on new business, revisions to engineering standards.
There was no.
Every time it
Yeah,
meets.
yeah. Oh, and she can come in.
Back. Good.
Okay, so just a little bit of context on this. The city has a document of engineering standards, and it essentially tells people how to build things. So for example, there's a detail in there for foot trails, about how they're supposed to be built, how thick the concrete is, how wide they are, all that kind of thing. And then you can imagine all the other things that people build, from manholes to water lines to fire hydrants, are all included in the engineering standards. So they're built appropriately, and in a way that reduces maintenance. So periodically, these are updated. Following adoption of the Active Transportation Master Plan, we did kind of a comprehensive review of the engineering standards to see what we might change to bring it more in line with the recommendations or the wording in the ATMP. We've taken all those potential changes and kind of divided them into three categories. The first is the ones that are relatively easy to do. Those are the ones that we're working on now that we'll talk about tonight. The second category are relatively easy, but they require either more information or more discussion on the part of staff before they're ready to move forward. And then the third category, the ones that are more difficult, that require a lot of information or a lot of conversation with the public, even a consultant study in some cases to figure out how we want to change the engineering standards to incorporate those. So again, this is just the first round. I've highlighted the ones in yellow for the ones for us to talk about. Those are the ones that are really related to our mission here, pedestrian accommodation, as well as to the ones that relate to the Active Transportation Master Plan. So I'm going to go through this. This is a short synopsis of the changes. I'm going to go through that, describe what they are, and then the actual changes are further down in this document. We'll look at a couple of them, but not all of them. And again, if you have any questions or comments about them, just jump in. The first section is about traffic control plans. This is when when construction or maintenance activities can affect streets, closes lanes, closes the entire street. We've added a statement here that whenever you affect sidewalks or bike lanes or foot trails, that a traffic control plan is required. This gives us an opportunity to review the plan and make sure that there's a detour in place, or that the facility, a sidewalk or whatever, isn't being closed unnecessarily, and gives us a little bit more control.
Great.
We generally try to do this anyway, but having it explicit in the engineering standards gives us more leverage. We've also added that bike and ped accommodation needs to be made when we have temporary realignments or rerouting. So either they are accommodated through the work zone or a detour is provided for them. The same goes for accessible routes. This is actually part of the new ADA guidelines. Like you have to have an accessible, if you have an accessible route along a street, like you have to maintain
Yes,
that
route
during construction.
Say, wow, sorry.
Yeah. And that includes, if you have a new temporary sidewalk alignment, it has to have ADA grades, sidewalk ramps, all of that. Next one, these two go together. And it's simply that where we build water valves and manholes, that they should be outside of sidewalks and bike lanes and foot trails wherever possible. Next one down, 13-14 in the engineering standards currently have almost nothing in them. There's just a brief reference to a bicycle guide. So we're adding more text for bikeways, pedestrian facilities, and foot trails. And the first round, of changes. We're taking a bunch of text that was previously included on the standard drawing for a foot trail. So there's like a drawing of what a foot trail would look like, and then like a ton of text that included in it. And a lot of that text was more important in the was more relevant in the document itself, instead of being in the standard detail. So a lot of the things aren't necessarily new. We're just moving them from the detail into the text part. And I'm gonna go through that in a little bit more detail in just a bit so we can see what those changes are. Signal design elements. Here we are asking that signal cabinets, poles, push buttons, and streetlight poles be out of sidewalks, bike lanes, foot trails. This generally has not been a problem, but we just want to make it clear. Pavement markings. Here we specify that they should conform to the manual on uniform traffic control devices. So just a reference to federal guidance. On our detail for a bus pullout, we ask that a foot trail be aligned behind the bus shelter instead of in front of it to avoid conflicts between trail users and patrons waiting for the bus. We've included a new detail for an exit entrance ramp for bikes. So when we go from a bike lane that's on the street to like a foot trail or a bikeway that's off the street, I'll show you what that looks like.
Pop a wheelie, jump the curb.
You're always welcome to do that if
Yeah.
that's your preference.
You want to look cool. I
Yeah.
suppose.
We have a new drawing for push button location. That complies with the new ADA guidelines. They're referred to as PROWAG, which is the Public Rights of Way Accessibility Guidelines. They were just kind of elevated from just kind of having them as a document to actually having them as official guidelines. The next step, if it happens, would be that they would be adopted as regulations, which means that they are enforceable, really the federal law, basically. As guidelines, they kind of are somewhere in between there, and if they are guidelines for how to meet the ADA laws, basically. So like if we had a federal grant project, for example, we'd have to meet PROWAG. If we want things to be accessible, in theory, we have to follow PROWAG. Maybe at some point we'll try to digest what's in there and show that to you. Yeah. There's a section on rapid flashing beacons. I'll show you the sign that's been added that says cross traffic may not stop. Use caution when crossing. Of course, this is for pedestrians, just to make sure that they understand how those things work. A couple of enhancements to the bike lane striping and a small change for crosswalks. We use transverse markings for crosswalks, the so-called piano keys, and we try to align them so they're out of wheel paths, so they wear out less quickly, basically. But sometimes if a lane gets really wide, or if the arrangement of the road is kind of wonky, you can end up with long distance between those markings. So we want to make sure that it looks like a crosswalk, even if the street is kind of wonky that way. So that's the synopsis of the changes. I'll skip down here. You're more than welcome to read this on your free time. So here's the section on 13-14, where we've added all the foot stuff. And I'll go through this quickly. Section 2 includes a number of dimensions for a trail. It's 10 feet wide, it has 2-foot shoulders, a 5-foot parkway. We specify a horizontal clearance from the edge of the trail.
What was the title of that? Section 13-14.
Bicycle facility.
That's like.
Was it just bicycle facilities? Is that what it said?
Yeah, I think it's going to become foot trails, pedestrian and bicycle facilities, from just bicycle facilities.
Just make sure we get pedestrian.
Yeah,
Good eye.
good eye. And then we have it kind of divided here into 2 divisions: ped and bike facilities, foot trails. We don't have much for the ped and bike facilities, but we'll start to populate that as we go along here. in subsequent updates. So we have a horizontal clearance of 3 feet from the edge of the trail, a vertical clearance of 10 feet. Grades, we specify not to exceed 8%. Although we give kind of an out if you really can't make 8%. We can't. Cross slope, we specify a design speed of 20 miles per hour for a paved trail and 15 for an aggregate trail. And that the design speed helps determine the horizontal and vertical curves. Section 3 is structural. That's divided into paved trails and aggregate trails. And here the biggest change is we specify an aggregate gradation that matches the material that we've been using the last couple of years. So that kind of that light brown, very fine mix. You can see here, this is the largest aggregate material in that mix is a 1/4 inch. So, about this big. Our previous, a little bit smaller. Our previous material, the largest piece was an inch, which when it gets loose, is really difficult for a lot of things. Yeah, it's hard to walk on. Yeah.
Bouncy.
If you're pushing a stroller or have a walker or wheelchair, it's almost impossible. So we've been doing this for a couple of years, but this makes it kind of our official guideline. So we can require others to do it as well. I won't go into too much detail about expansion and control joints, but we just try to make the concrete surface as smooth as possible. Wheels, which includes bikes, but really most benefits small wheels, like front wheels on wheelchairs, walkers, strollers, etc. Some details for the shoulder. Trails are 10 feet wide, but there's a 2-foot shoulder on either side that's intended as kind of a bike recovery zone. We want to make sure that it's useful, functional for that. A section on transitions between foots and sidewalks and streets. And then guidance on where to use foots fencing. And most of this is taken from AASHTO, Guide for Development of Bike Facilities. And we've included it here as well to provide people with guidance. And really, foots fencing is intended as like a safety rail to keep you from on the trail. So if you're on a bike and you go around a corner and you don't go too fast or whatever, you go off the trail, what do you run into? Is there like an alligator-filled lake down below, sharp pointy rocks, a wall? And there's a trade-off here. Like if you're going off the trail and we have a fence, you're going to hit the fence. So what does more damage, hitting the fence or going off the trail? And AASHTO lists, based on how steep the slope is that you go down and how much the drop is. So the more shallow, the more the drop. It tells you where fencing is needed. Really, our intent with this is not to overuse fencing, basically, because it's expensive. And if fencing is along both sides of a trail, people can feel trapped, like you're in kind of a cattle chute. Some standards for tunnels and underpasses. So we specify a width based on the length. So the longer they get, the wider they should be, just for comfort. And then a clearance of 10 feet. So that's foot trails. Just a couple other things really quickly. Scroll. A lot of changes. Sorry, I didn't realize it was this far down. This document has enlarged in the time that I looked at it last. Here's the bike ramp detail. So this is a situation where you're going from an off-street facility onto the road. It could just be reversed. Here's a push button detail. So here's a ramp. I think this may need some adjustments because I think the push button should really be here. So if you're in a wheelchair, you would be able to pull up alongside, hit the push button, and then kind of continue straight onto the ramp versus having to go over to push the button and then back to use the ramp. We'll straighten that out. I think the last one I wanted to show you is just the rapid flashing beacon detail. It's located here. So really these changes are just adding a mast arm that goes out over the street. It's kind of the current guidance nationally, and it gives these, this is the flashing light. So it's over the middle of the street. It's much more visible to
Where you're,
vehicles. Yeah. Before they were on the sides. So here and here. We've had a bunch of discussion about these crossings. And I think we may think of these in terms of different configurations. We may not always need a crossing that looks like this. Sometimes it's enough just to go kind of a little diagonal. In some cases, it may not be needed at all. These are helpful if in some cases where the ramp on this side and the ramp on this side are offset. So you can make up that difference in the island in the middle, yeah. And then this is the sign, which will go in the middle where the second push button is.
keep your risk managers happy. Look, it's just the
You
light.
know about that?
Yeah, I do.
Any questions, comments? Procedurally, we've shared this information with developers, engineers, architects, builders, because they are sensitive to changes in city standards that end up costing more. And there's been a lot of discussion even at the council level about things that make housing costs go up. So we want to make sure everybody has a chance to see these and comment.
Seem reasonable. They should be, a lot of that stuff we should do anyway, it seems like, you know.
Yeah, and the cost may be small, but
Yeah.
they still should have an opportunity to see them. So we're anticipating I think we're coming back to the Transportation Commission and a few other commissions at the beginning of the year, and then maybe going to council in March. So again, I'll keep an item on the agenda just to give you an update about what's happening. And then if there anything significant to talk about, I'll include it as an item.
Thanks, Mark. Concluding general business, report time. Butler fourth.
That continues to move forward. Nothing really to report. We're working on the roundabout that we looked at last time. And they're calling it the optimized roundabout. And few other design issues on the corridor. Fremont Boulevard, Metro Plan got a grant from the Bloomberg Foundation for asphalt art.
I saw that.
Yeah. So we're coordinating our project to narrow the lanes and provide traffic calming with that asphalt art project. We're working on some striping. We're hoping to go back out to the neighborhood and get comments on it before too long, the next couple of weeks. The asphalt art project is kind of a collaborative effort. So the city and Metro Plan are involved. Follow's been engaged, and Creative Flag, which I think used to be like the Arts Council.
I think the people that did the utility boxes, I think, is that
That's Beautification Public Art Commission.
Yes, and they are also.
another one I, like, yeah.
Yeah.
So about the asphalt art.
It's slippery now.
Like Jeff was saying, or was the subject of some grilling when he talked to the Beautification Public Art Commission. So I was gonna ask with the engineering standards, how is that being addressed in the new engineering standards that we can do something like this now? Like the asphalt art, because previously, a couple months ago, we were told that Flagstaff can't do that. And now it's amazing what a little free money can do. Now, but I have full support for it as absolutely, I'm psyched. But it was like, oh no, we can't do this because we've been talking about it as a crosswalks at the downtown
Remember they did that seven.
connection center. And that's what we were talking about moving forward with that. And of course, the world's gonna come to an end and people are gonna die if we put anything other than white paint in the road. And so I'm just curious how that's impacting the rest of the transportation world here.
So I think there's still some questions to work through on the legality. I think there's a clear distinction between crosswalks and other locations. And I think the kerfuffle, is that the word we used?
One I brought up, yeah.
Yeah.
That came up was related to crosswalks, and the city was working on a policy for painting crosswalks. And I think the federal guidance on crosswalks is a little bit more clear. However, that leaves the rest.
Can't do it. I mean, they're all over Phoenix.
Yeah, yeah.
And believe me, people are dying on the streets of Phoenix, but not due to those crosswalks.
Yes, there may be other factors.
Yeah.
We probably wouldn't do this for crosswalks, but in other places, like in the case of Fremont, there's 4 lanes now. We're gonna go down to 2 lanes. So this creates a canvas of areas that used to be part of the street, like part of driving lanes, but now are something else, that are not areas that we intend for people to drive.
We're heading down that slippery slope and I like it.
The only question I would have, just in terms,
I'm coming for your crosswalks, Jeff.
in terms of safety, would they be walkways? Because I saw it, I was like, oh, that looks cool. Then I was like, are they gonna walk on that painted surface or?
Probably not. Like
Okay.
they wouldn't be in crosswalks.
I'm worried about like slip, sometimes
Yeah.
painted surfaces
Yeah.
have different
Slippery.
coefficient of friction in water and.
And I think there's ways to address. that
Okay,
too.
I would assume they use
Yeah,
special
like we wouldn't
not
in the
slippery.
bike lane.
We had that issue at the campus where we put in we polished some floor, super nice, and when it rained, that became like a skating rink. And so we had to go through and spend it was a lot, like $1 million to buff out these floors. And it was a beautiful floor. We're like, well, we gotta make this thing ugly now. So anyway.
No, it's all right.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks for indulging me there.
Not at all.
Project.
Good questions. It's probably also worth mentioning that the Bloomberg Foundation with this grant is very explicit that these are intended to be temporary. But when the temporary nature of them ends, you can decide what to do with them. And that ranges from actively obliterating them, so whatever you had just goes away. And they're okay with that. I mean, they understand that might be one of the outcomes. The second is you could just leave them fade naturally. And the third is you could try to make them permanent. Use higher quality paint, seal it, develop a plan for maintaining them. So they understand that it's temporary, but they see it kind of going in one of those 3 outcomes. And of course, I think they would imagine they would, most like the third outcome, that they become more permanent. The second interesting thing is about this grant is their intent is not really to have art on asphalt. It's to calm traffic and create more of a friendly atmosphere for walking and biking. So it feels like an art grant, but it's really a traffic calming grant per the kind of the grantors guidelines. So
It'd be a shame if we calm traffic at crosswalks. Absolute shame.
but I
Guess.
what we're here for. Stay tuned.
I've seen road art in lots of places, so I'm surprised to hear it's a problem here.
There's a couple people here that it's a problem
Yeah,
for.
it was it was the Chamber of Commerce, or it was something that happened. I remember it was,
You'd think the chamber would
I think they did,
Draw
yeah,
people in.
the one that I remember.
Is it the one in Aspen and LaRue you're talking about?
No, I don't know that we have any, cause I was talking about using them for crosswalks.
Oh, okay.
And it simply is just changing the color or
Yeah,
or having something, they don't necessarily need to be the white stripes. Like some people think they do, but they don't. In Phoenix, they don't need to be, right? Other cities have figured it out.
It glows.
Yet here, you can't. And so it's just, rather than just the boring, normal crosswalk, I mean, it is a traffic calming device. And what better place to have traffic calm than when people are trying to cross on their feet or on their bikes.
I thought you were referring to the one that was put on Aspen and LaRue. It was a couple years ago.
yes.
This is
Yeah.
where,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the Chamber of Commerce did that and people didn't like it.
Or the
Nobody else
look at
loved
the
it.
CBP.
Or somebody, I don't know. I remember reading about it in the paper thinking.
Yeah, people were.
Yeah.
I'm happy I live in a city where this is a big issue.
Yeah.
This is what we have to.
Yeah, I'm
But
like,
admittedly, any of these are super temporary because cars are driving over them all day.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's when.
Why didn't people like it? Was it just
I
the
don't remember.
I
Actual-
don't
Sounded
recall.
amusing.
Oh,
subject of the art or something? Or was it-
no, it was like waste of money.
It was different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that was part of it. It was sort of it was less about art and more about, it was kind of promotional.
Yeah, like
I'm not sure.
who approved this? Yeah.
Yeah. I think, the difference between that and Fremont example is like our canvas is areas that would not be part of driving lanes, for example. So it should
The aim is to calm.
bear
traffic.
better. Yeah, yeah. In terms of getting worn out or driven over.
First mile, last.
First mile, last mile, I think we looked at the projects. We're moving through the design process. We got the crossing evaluation. We're moving from the kind of the concept plans into what we call 60% plans and have narrowed the list of projects to the ones that are feasible. I haven't been sharing, but I want to share the next couple if that's okay.
Sure.
I've got separate slides on Lake Mary Road and crash data, so I'm gonna hold on to that for a second. Safe sidewalks is the effort, is what we call the effort that the Commission on Inclusion and Adaptive Living is going through.
Okay.
I haven't heard much from that recently, but we'll keep tabs on it. And the last is PAC appointments and reappointments. We just have the one vacancy, and I think a few of you might be eligible up for reappointment. Transportation Commission meets again in February, so we'll try to have it figured out for that. Lake Mary, did we talk about this last time? Did I give you the context or the background?
I
for
heard
it?
there was like a working group that was put together to look at doing something. That's what I
Yes,
remember.
yeah, and it really, it was in response to the crash between the group
Right.
ride and the motorhome. And a handful of people who are runners and cyclists, and really at a competitive level, were interested in what could be done to Lake Mary Road. To not only make it safer, but to kind of highlight it as a community resource. And
Right.
it really is kind of unique in a way. One of the members of the group had this long list of Olympians who have trained.
Oh, yeah, you go out there.
On Lake Mary
Like,
Road,
It's
yeah,
crazy. They'll pass me sometimes and I think I'm doing pretty good.
So the county, so we've been meeting a couple times, and it's the county and kind of the group of runners and bicyclists, and the county's come up with a couple of recommendations, which
We didn't hear that part. That's good. Yeah.
this is just like
Okay,
2
yeah.
weeks ago.
Okay,
literally, which were received positively
thinking,
by
yeah.
the runners and the cyclists who were present at least. So kind of considering to be a recreation corridor, putting signage at both ends that kind of highlight it as a recreation corridor, just to call attention to the fact that, of how it's used and for vehicles that they may encounter, runners and bicyclists. Mile markers along it, really more for the runners. I think they were talking about every quarter mile.
So they can get their speed work in, you have to paint the pavement. That's what they do now.
Yeah, there's there's overlapping marks out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you see it, you're like, it's not a survey marker. Yeah.
And then the county's gonna share the road signs.
I think they have those out there already, yeah.
Have they been
Yes.
putting them out?
They-
They have,
they-
I just
there,
drove
yeah.
it.
like new ones.
Or they got the
Week
3
ago.
feet minimum
Yeah.
signs.
Yeah.
I pointed, I helped try to educate it.
Yeah, share the road. Little, they're tiny.
Yeah.
Like we were looking at one now, they would seem huge, but when you
Yeah.
put them on the
Yeah.
road, they,
They look
where'd they go? Yeah,
right.
yeah. They have like 30 of them that they're gonna put along. the road.
Oh,
They are working on coordination with the sheriff's office. And if you've been around town for a while, you may remember that over the years, there's been kind of tension between enforcement and the group rides. Out on Lake Mary Road, like every Saturday morning, there's a group ride out there.
Right, yeah, paint.
They tend to-
there, yeah.
They can go, they tend to be, it's a big group. They take up some space.
They have a big footprint, yeah.
Sweeping and maintenance, they're planning on a work session with the county's Board of Supervisors to kind of go through all this. And then, the city actually has Lake Mary Road out to the campground.
Right.
And it's county beyond that. So if we're doing some treatments, can we coordinate and do kind of the same thing, especially in terms of like signs? Because really, like, where do you consider that corridor to begin? Probably right after JWP, not where city limits end and the county begins. Then some longer term things. FLAP is a federal land access program. It's a grant that the city and the county have used before to widen Lake Mary Road.
Okay.
Like if you've been here for a long time, you remember that the city portion of Lake Mary Road used to have no shoulders whatsoever.
Oh,
And the city got a federal land access grant to widen that from JWP all the way out to city limits.
Didn't know that.
The county's got a couple of them, the part that was widened around Mormon Lake and the part that
right,
was
that's really
widened
nice, yeah.
from the second Mormon Lake turnoff south were both the same program. They've submitted an application to widen the part between the two Mormon Lake entrances to make that more
The
consistent.
overlook, yeah.
They're looking at places for additional parking. And they want to make sure, they want to see what they can do to make sure that the shoulders are consistent throughout, because they tend to vary. Now, I think they go down to as low as 4 feet.
There's some narrow spots, but
Yeah.
overall, it's not like going on 180.
I think farther south you go, the
Yeah,
less there
Yeah,
are
when you
wide
clear that second
shoulder,
turn.
wide asphalt shoulders, yeah. I think that's a big reason why it's such a athletic corridor is the shoulders. I mean, if it was
Yes.
just road,
You don't see them going up from Snowball to up
No.
180.
no,
Really?
I've done that once.
Yeah.
yeah,
Never again. You do it all the time. You're like, never again.
no. Yeah,
So anything.
and I think, the part, just before the Lake Marys, there's kind of a wide spot where a lot of people park. That really was, that started when the city section did not have any shoulders whatsoever. So people would drive out there.
Okay.
And that was really kind of the first place you could park where
Yeah,
there's
the
a shoulder.
mailboxes, yeah.
The mailboxes, yeah. Now, people park right at that kind of that gravel pullout right after Lake Mary Road or after JWP. There's like a little kind of cul-de-sac a little bit further up.
Yeah, that's like
Park around
the
there.
road access, yeah.
Park across the street at the Forest Service office.
Yeah, I know exactly. That's where I used to park.
Yeah,
First
that's
moved in,
fine.
like, hey,
I see.
my dad's.
I was wondering, like,
Yeah,
how many people are working there? Oh, they're not Forest Service.
I would always make sure there's plenty of room.
There's the trailhead on Lone Tree.
Right, that
People
one fills
park
up
at.
quick.
Yeah.
Of course, our ultimate goal is that everybody can ride from their house. Like
Right.
it's like your path through town is comfortable enough that you can do
Yeah.
that.
That's what I hope to do. Anything would help. But I still think it's, I mean, as somebody who's written it a lot, I think it's pretty good
Yeah,
overall. Yeah. I think when there's incidents that I've had, it's not from the road. It's just from people driving too fast
yeah.
and just not paying attention.
They gave us some of the statistics on vehicle speeds and they're pretty high. I mean, I think the speed limit for the
Straight area,
is 50.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the speeds are,
nobody goes 50.
nobody goes
Goes
50,
60,
yeah.
70,
The
80.
retired guys, maybe, even they.
That's because the road is designed that way. You get out there, it's
I know.
straight away. So,
Going 50 is like,
yeah.
okay.
Feels a bit slow, especially when there's like 4 cars piled up behind you. Getting to pass.
Yeah.
Need some artwork out there on the road. Yeah. Oh, it's like-
That'd be a lot of artwork. It's a long stretch.
Then artwork.
Yeah.
Make it last.
But I think anything is good though, some effort. And it seems to incrementally get better.
Yeah, I think just recognizing it kind of is really a community asset.
Right.
For people. It's always amazing to me when I go out there at the variety of people that use it, like the cyclists, for example, some are obviously, elite levels.
Right.
A lot of them are really.
You see people training out there.
Yeah.
It's been a couple summers, but you see guys out there. Good. They all spend money.
Yep. Okay, last thing is on, I just wanted to give you an update on some crash stuff. The Metro Plan RTSP, that's the Regional Transportation Safety Plan, is just wrapping up. We've been kind of engaged in that. That is a link, but that really doesn't go on the screen. Their follow-up effort is Safe Streets for All Safety Action Plan, which they're going to embark on next, and they really want to focus on equity, vulnerable users as part of that effort. Speaking of vulnerable users, ADOT's assessment is complete, and they're rolling that into the statewide version. It's the strategic traffic safety plan for the entire state is going to use that vulnerable user data. ADOT has done a road safety assessment for Milton. We expect to see the results of that before too long. That may be something that identifies potential projects that may be eligible for grant funding. We'll have to see what it has. And then the city has requested a road safety assessment through ADOT for that section of Highway 89, essentially from Steve's all the way out to city limits. And this was, the impetus for this was we have had a number of pedestrian fatalities along that section of road. And so the road safety assessment will let us look into that and see if there are road related causes for that or countermeasures that we can implement to kind of cut down on that.
There've been a lot more just vehicle wrecks out there last year. Like there've been a lot. It's been a lot worse last year than the last few years. People are getting crazy out there.
So that
In
could
addition to all the, in addition to all the folks that have been hit, killed.
right. And if it's truly a safety project, there are countermeasures that would address it. There are grant programs just for safety.
Yeah.
That we potentially apply for. So we've applied for the assessment. I don't know when we'll hear, but again, we'll keep you informed. So.
Thank you. Last thing was talking about the next meeting and potential combined meeting with the back.
That's all good?
Yeah.
You're fine on it?
What day is theirs? Because we would go on there.
It's the 11th.
We would go on their day though, right? Because last time they came on our day.
Well, they're
Or leave it on our day. I'm happy to
Stick
do
it
that.
up.
their day is like 2 days after New Year, so.
So we're
So-
gonna keep it.
Yeah, like it helps them out in a way to schedule the next.
Okay,
week.
perfect. Yeah, no, we don't need to do it that quick. Okay,
I'll be
yeah,
there.
if they would, if they want to come then, that'd be great.
So it is the day before, like a 3-day weekend, 2 days. So I plan my time.
Yeah, you need those 3-day
Well,
weekends.
no,
Ron?
I actually
So you
scheduled.
have 7-day weekends?
Yeah, like, yeah,
Of what possible relevance is
I know.
the concept of a weekend?
I know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's 7-day weekend, followed by another 7-day weekend.
Saturdays, weekends and weekdays, that's it, right?
We're just
Good.
kids, you know.
Believe me, I love it, I
What
can
a-
be you guys.
One of my employees is retiring at the end of the year,
Yeah.
and so we had our, little going away thing, and I started talking about it, and I realized I was talking so much about how envious I
Yeah,
was that he
yeah.
was retiring. And that I had like 15 years before I'd be doing that, and
Yeah.
I was looking forward to it. And that's coming from somebody who loves his job. And
Right,
I'm
right,
like,
yeah.
I would gladly, I could fill up my time in retirement, it's fine.
Not bad.
Anything else, including announcements? So we'll plan on next meeting Thursday, January 11th. If we don't interfere with Ron's 3-day
I
weekend.
planned around it, that's, we can't go Thursday.
All right, well, then I will call this meeting adjourned at 18:03. Thanks very much, everybody. Thanks for online folks for joining and listening in. And we'll see you
Thank you.
all. next time.
There's two
Bye-bye.
kinds of. Talk to you about retirement, the ones that are envious, and the ones who are